Welcome to GAFA Insight once again. And this is me, Kamaljeet Kaur Soni, President of Global Association of Forensic Accountant. We try to call industry leader from different areas, different industries. And today we are having privilege to have none other than Mr. Ram Kumar. And the more I say about sir is less. So we would be starting the conversation here, and then we will learn a lot from his own experience. And of course, he has a lot to say to our professionals, people who are aspiring to be getting into forensic accounting field. Also, for those industry leaders who are into mid of their career, still not sure how does this market look like. A lot is changing in the market. Today, the market is way too dynamic. However, there are certain skills which are there in demand today, and I'm very sure those skills will be in demand even 20 years down the line. So let's start our conversation from here, and let's learn from the industry leader.
Thank you, President Kamaljeet, and from the Global Association of Forensic Accountants. And it will be my pleasure to be part of this.
First question to you. You have had decade of experience. You may have seen professionals from a very early stage to the going to top in the corporate hierarchy. What exactly is your experience in this area of academics? How does that market look like? Do you see any change? What was there, say, about 10 years back and today, what we see today?
Yeah. So I'll add a bit of background to kind of also say that my dad himself was a absolutely champion accountant. And in that sense, it probably rubbed on me, even though I was a chemical engineer. I decided to graduate towards finance and management, and then added accounting in my portfolio to ensure that I become a teacher, justifying his thoughts and his basis. So a lot has changed. So let me put it this way: that stop climbing the information curve, climb the accountability curve. That is, answers are getting cheap. The person who signs will never be cheap. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that these days, in a world of AI and other things, it's very easy to generate an answer. But to sign a check, or to sign a certain paper, or to sign a certain IFRS statement, there is a ask to it. One error, and then you are there with NFRA and other forces to get you. So that's something which we need to factor it into account. And I would say that, in other words, the accountability curve has moved up, but not the information curve. Information is far more easily available. For 30 years, 10 plus years, in fact, for 30 years, the professional bargain rested on privileged access to knowledge. The tax code, the standard, the precedent, the forensics judgments that are there, nobody else had read. That moat, relatively speaking, is gone. A model reads IFRS faster than any of us, and it may not, you can say, it may not be able to kind of make a judgment. For example, it does not bill for the reading, so the honest advice is uncomfortable. The competencies that made a generation dependable are precisely the ones which probably are on the verge of getting automated. That said, so what has gone is, what has not gone is essentially the person who signs. Indispensability now sits with whoever can say, I have satisfied myself. And when it comes to say, I have satisfied myself, means being part of the witness box. That single sentence is the whole profession, and no system yet has been built which can utter it. So 3 practical moves I will suggest for our friends who probably have seen this transition. First, become a bilingual. That is, don't be a coder. Don't be a professional who can specify a model and interrogate it. and audit it. If you cannot ask a system how it reached its conclusion, then I would say, relatively speaking, we are not supervising it. You are not supervising it, and you are ratifying it. And that's the first suggestion. Second, build a portfolio of hard, unfakeable proofs. What I mean to say is not certificates, artifacts, a report that can survive cross examination, a model whose assumptions you can define line by line. In a world where anyone can generate a plausible document in 9 seconds, the scarce good is a document that someone will stake their license on. And in that sense, our forensic professionals would probably, I'm sure, will be taking note of that. Third, I think let's own outcomes rather than tasks. In other words, we can't stop measuring ourselves by the files produced. And we'll have to now start measuring ourselves based on the conclusions we stand behind. Hmm? So, a very quick example I'll give you. Of course, there are many personal examples I can share, but I love reading these Jatka tales and Amar Chitrakathas. So, something I'll pick up. There's an old Jataka tale wherein a troop of monkeys are trapped by a river as a king's soldiers close in. So what does this monkey king does? The leader stretches his own body between two trees to make a living bridge so that the troops can cross to safety. And that he does at the cost of his life. The watching human king, humbled, asks, I why did you guard the herd? That is, why did you do this? He says, I just guarded the herd. The monkey king replies, note carefully what makes him indispensable. The monkey king here. It is not that he leaps farther than the other monkeys who are there. There are plenty of monkeys who could probably jump a little more. The fact that he could place himself between the people and the danger and answers for the result, that is the accountability curve. So, and we repeat this story even after 2000 years during bedtime. So the point is, the monkey king also counsels during the discussion to the human king on how to rule. He kind of uses the word saying, use the look at it as a dasaraja dharma, 10 duties of a sovereign. And it largely speaking talks of integrity to freedom from anger. What makes him indispensable was not a technique or was not a audit rule, but a settled character others could rely on, a character of integrity, a character on whom others could depend on. That is a governance point, and which is what our senior friends would probably easily catch very quickly. And it is worth stating plainly to a global audience watching these, you can say India, that as states and firms automate the routine, scarce resource becomes trustworthy. The human character at exactly the points where discretion still matters, the auditor who cannot be bought, the officer who signs her name to an unpopular truth, these people will be valorized. Institutions are only as strong as the number of such people they can feed. So the most future-proof asset is not a skill a model will swallow next year. It is a reputation for judgment and integrity that compounds for a lifetime. See, machines will depreciate, but character over time will appreciate. So sticking to certain values in life and character will, I think, will be immensely helpful. That's how I will put it. I hope I've been able to convey what probably you are looking for.
Absolutely. And it is as a very, very wise advice not to rely on technology blindly. Anybody can generate something with the help of technology. However, not many people can take accountability. Very, very well said, sir. Moving on, in the continuity of this conversation, I wanted to understand that today we see lot of decisions are being taken with half cooked information, incomplete information, whether it is policy making, whether it is corporate decisions. What would be your advice when it comes to a strong decision making, something which comes with accountability, something where people own that information, they know the entirety of the information, and then the decisions are being taken?
Fantastic. Let me kind of share something which I had learned over time and over probably 3 decades of my own professional experience. You see, at the junior and mid level of a professional, forensic professional, what are the things which are needed? One is domain expertise, whatever domain you kind of stick to. Second is the functional skills. Do you have those functional skills or not? And third is behavioral competencies. Do you have those behavioral competencies needed for that particular job? But as you move to a senior level, it is largely speaking, are you able to have a certain values, that is thumb rules or normative decisions to stick to a certain rule and stay with it? It's like, for example, a Mother Teresa will stay with a certain decision only based on one rule, which is compassion. A Mahatma Gandhi will only stay with one decision based on ahimsa. For him, even if you look at his biography, even honesty or truth would come second before ahimsa. So one has to understand that the values become far, far more powerful, and you have to be in an age when many things can be gamed. That's very important. So let me kind of put it this way, that the machine is brilliant at the known and helpless at the novel. And it has never once refused on instruction it should have refused. In that sense, it is the moral courage under institutional pressure to verify, to cross check, to kind of abandon our biases and take the move a little further. So maybe I think in case you are looking at a story, probably I will use a story of the lion and a rabbit in the Jataka tales which are there. So there is this rabbit which is there, and a mango falls on that particular rabbit. And it kind of feels, just because it has woken up from sleep, it feels that the world is going to crash down. And it starts running, saying the world is going to crash. And other animals start joining. Hares, deer, elephants, and whatever. Entire forest is stampeding towards a cliff. A lion halts the herd, asks why are they running. They said the earth is going to crash down. Who said that? They keep each referring to each one else, saying so and so said so and so. Finally, they identify the rabbit which said this. So the lion orders all of them to stay calm and says, let me go and check where he found them. He goes and checks. So the rabbit takes him to the tree where he was sleeping. And he looks at up there, and that's a mango tree. And he can clearly see a mango which has fallen. He says that all this kind of this scaring essentially has happened because you have not been able to walk to the spot and check out what is it. It is just a single fallen fruit which has led to chaos and confusion. So watch precisely what the lion has done. It is a specification of the human skill AI cannot supply. He does not join the stampede, however loud and unanimous it could be. He audits the chain of hearsay to its source. He inspects the primary evidence himself, and he has the standing to make the forest believe him. So, skepticism, source verification, earned trust, these are the forensic triad. Hmm? And note that the courage in it is because that is the part we often tend to skip in our rush to do more quantity of work. Quality is far more important than the quality of quantity of work. Standing still while everything around you runs is not a analytical act. It is a nerve. Hmm? And in that sense, while my instructions to the young may sound a little old-fashioned, read widely outside your speculation becomes synthesis, feeds on range, and practice reduces complexity to one honest page in the language of forensics. And rehearse before you read it. That is, that particular language can be rehearsed before we read it. The sentence then ends either I am able to sign this or I am not able to sign this. So teach the young scholars and young people who aim to do well in the art of forensic accounting that particular to be the lion and not the hare, not the rabbit, and certainly not the 99th animal in the stampede who never asked why me or why should we run or who told, etc. So that I think might just help in anchoring the question you had asked. I hope it is clear.
Fantastic, fantastic. Absolutely. A very, very interesting way to put this critical topic forward. Moving on to next question. In fact, this is something which I think is a global issue. Globally, people would like to understand that there are so many certifications, degrees. People are going through a lot of skill enhancement. Still, employer says that we are not able to find the right fit. So, where exactly is the gap? Is there something which is related to education? Are we not educating enough? Where exactly is that gap lies actually?
Yeah, it's a good question. So let me ask Singh, we are measuring the one thing that has been fully commoditized, these certifications, degrees, and courses, and then expressing the surprise that the measurement predicts nothing about performance. In other words, having that particular certification doesn't kind of acknowledge the words. So the paradox is real here. And never ever has been have there been so many qualifications. Never there has been so much complaint from the industry. But this is not a knowledge gap. Knowledge has never been more abundant or more free compared to the times which we are in now. Three failures are doing the damage in my personal sense. First, we assess recall in an era of infinite recall. Hmm? The closed book examination was a sensible proxy for competence when information was scarce and retrieval was the bottleneck. Neither condition holds now. So we are measuring precisely the capacity that has been fully commoditized and then registering surprise that our measurement predicts so little about our performance. Second, we teach in clean environments and deploy into dirty ones. In other words, every case study arrives with a complete data set, a cooperative counterparty, and a right answer in the instructor's manual. You will agree that real work has a hostile witness and a missing quarter of records, and the feedback is about worse than the content problem. In other words, skilled intuition develops only in a high validity environment with repeated practice and prompt high quality feedback. Most certifications and curricula deliver feedback once and probably weeks and months late as a letter of the alphabet, let's say F or D or A or something. That is not a learning environment. That is a scoreboard. Third, and this is new and genuinely urgent, there is a apprenticeship gap. Hmm? What is this apprenticeship gap? The tasks we historically gave juniors to build judgment were tied to a schedule, foot the ledger, draft the memo. And those are exactly the tasks AI now performs. For example, a recent ADP payroll study, which you may be aware of, by Brian Jolson, Chandler et al., found a 13% relative decline in employment, to my knowledge, for 22 to 25% holds in the most AI exposed occupations. For young software developers, nearly 20% from the late 2002s to peak, and crucially concentrated on which place AI automates rather than augments. So, what's the solution? Read that carefully because it's the whole argument. We are not facing a shortage of trained juniors. We are dismantling the mechanism by which juniors become seniors. If we remove the bottom rungs and keep advertising the ladder, we are not closed the skill gaps. We have widened it and placed a certificate hmm, over the whole. The point is so what is the kind of corollary which one can make sense of? Every Indian child knows Ekalavya. Refused instruction by a great teacher Drona, the forest boy builds a clay statue of his teacher and trains before it alone until he surpasses the formally taught princess, and his skill is self-made, earned in the dust without a certificate to his name. So the story essentially can be cut two ways. It rebukes the notion that learning lives inside an institution's walls is the most capable people. Institutions walls means in this case degrees, certifications, and courses that are there. And essentially, it also says that the most capable people I have known kept an Ekalavya somewhere in them. But we must also be honest about the darker turn. When Ekalavya is asked to surrender and his thumb, institutions which could protect their monopoly rather than nurture talent refused. Any education system, any certification system should be frightened of producing graduates less resourceful than a boy practicing alone before a clay teacher. This applies to chartered accountancy, company secretaryship, CFA, or any other profession that is there. The fix is not more content. Content is infinite and cheap. It is supervised struggle with unstructured problems and honest, immediate feedback on that struggle, done ideally through apprenticeship. And it is deliberately preserving apprenticeship work that in a machine could do faster. That is accepting the inefficiency because that inefficiency is the cost of training, both in terms of time and resources. So the employers now complaining about the gap are often the institutions that stop mentoring, whether it is the Big Four or many others. Take the article clerk on the difficult assignment. Explain not just what you concluded, but how you weighed in. A profession renews itself one apprentice at a time, or it doesn't do it all. So that's how I think I'll put it. In other words, in summary, I'll probably say focus on apprenticeship as a way to move further.
Certainly, absolutely. Now I'm tempted to ask a question in the same continuity. The field which we belong to, forensic accounting, or in a layman term, we call it fraud investigation. Ethics and integrity has a very, very important role to play. But in the changing environment, we see these two words are more of a bookish concepts. With your decades of experience, what do you think about these two very, very significant words which are almost missing in today's corporate life or otherwise as well? With the rise of frauds, with each every case, we realize that it's not just about numbers, it is about integrity. So, where exactly are we lacking?
Right. So that's a very beautiful point. So I think ethics, integrity, and what you mentioned also is has to deal with incomplete information. See, the judgment has to be made with incomplete information. So let me start with a statement saying most people think good judgment means having more information. It doesn't. If you wait for complete information, the decision has already been taken away from you. So I'll give you the example of Sucheta Dalal in April 1992. She did 10 years of groundwork, one stubborn question, and then the nerve to publish before it was safe. She did that. Luck arrived at the one address which was prepared to receive it in the name of Sucheta Dalal. And today it's a history on how Harshat Mehta essentially scam, the big bull, essentially is looked at as the biggest scam the country and the stock exchanges faced during those particular times. So, what is the institutional corollary of this? See, there are these five habits behind the base by studying others' failure. One is SFIO reports, second is SEBI orders, judgments, and there is this separate decision quality from outcome quality. The decision quality against, in other words, what I'm saying is protect against the unacceptable case before optimizing for the best solution. Write the reasoning down before you know the answer and structurally appoint, if needed, a dissenter. What is the institutional corollary of it? I'll also give a proper example from my own case, but the institutional corollary is organizations that judge only on outcomes are training their people to gamble and to hide. Review the process out loud, especially when the outcome was good. So it's more like the story of Vikram and the Betala. A training academy for judgment. Vikram and Betal stories, if you observe, it's essentially like a training academy for judgment disguised as a ghost story. The discipline of being required to reach a verdict is always pushed on Raja Vikramaditya. So in forensic work, uncertainty is not a problem in the job. Uncertainty and handling incomplete information is the job. Let me give you a practical context of it. In my, you can say, own stint of over 3 decades as part of leadership roles, there have been fair circumstances wherein there have been forces, both natural and unnatural, wherein, and even incentives, which would say that, look, if you accept this, we will do this. Thankfully, having gone through a childhood wherein my dad will throw anything which comes as a gift to him before our eyes, and during our childhood, we would be surprised why did he throw the gift which was given, whether it is you can say a bag of fruits or some gifts or whatever, as an accountant. But that led me to the thumb rule of having professional integrity at the highest scale. And I stay with that, come what may, collecting little more information to the extent feasible, but take a judgment call with incomplete information and have other things kind of cued. And essentially, this particular judgment helps you in keeping your values intact and keeping your professional integrity intact. And that's a suggestion I would probably like to give to my friends who are there. That is, reading the SFIO reports, SEBI orders, judgments is fine. But finally, I think one should be able to write one's own reasonings and know the answer before the memory of, you can say, dishonesty or anything else is past. That's something which I probably like to kind of throw as a way forward to my friends who are coming and listening to this first time. Or another example I'll give you. You see, in competency, na, we typically, when we teach, we talk of four quadrants. Unconscious incompetence, consciously incompetent, second quadrant, then consciously competent, and fourth quadrant is unconsciously competent. So, for instance, I'll give you a very simple example. Let's say you're, let's say, driving a car or driving. When you are not in need of it, you will be saying, "What is the need for it? I can always take a walk. I can always take a stroll, etc." In other words, at that particular stage, you are unconsciously incompetent. Then what happens? There'll be a time or there'll be natural forces in your family or in your personal life which will say driving is important. So you become conscious about your incompetence. You get trained. And when you are repeatedly driving, what happens is many a times you start changing a gear or taking a certain decision because you know that you are unconscious of your competence. So, which is what also happens with the thumb rules and values and judgment calls which you have to take in the profession of forensic accounting. I hope I am able to convey my point, Kamji.
I think this is one of the most precious advice I've ever received when it comes to integrity, and insight is it's very very practical. Uh, it's very easy not to follow integrity, and of course not to know the boundaries, but your piece of advice really helped. So it was really really pleasure to have you with us. Before we uh, wind up this session, I would like to have your final piece of advice for all the professionals worldwide who are watching you, who are listening to you, and who definitely want to get a piece of advice.
Right. So I will share it in the following fashion. Uh, Over time, I would probably suggest that what has paid me dividend is going with an open mind and having learning agility intact, come what may, whatever might be the challenge. If I have a certain dream goal and if I have certain set of values, sticking to them yet going with an open mind. If someone is saying that, look, there is so and so task which is there, would you like to kind of go ahead, try it out? I would say I will just go ahead, try it out. And then have that, you can say, calmness in yourself to say that, look, I would probably have myself and my values intact before getting into any wrong signature or wrong decision or signing on a wrong sheet of paper. It's like there is this story of a turtle, in case you probably are aware of it. A turtle wants to kind of fly from one place to another. So what it does is it requests two birds which are flying, saying that, can you carry me? And both the birds agree. So there is both the birds kind of catch onto it. So it latches onto something, and then the bird is flying with the turtle in there. So the people are looking up there saying, look how the turtle is being carried away by two birds. What the turtle should have done is, should not have, it was told earlier also by the birds that don't talk. But the turtle who would not stop talking, because just because the people down there were talking that how can a turtle fly, look how beautiful, intelligent the turtle and the birds are, essentially talks. And the moment it talks, what happens? It falls. So that a rare vantage which was thrown away by simple ego. In other words, to my friends, what I'm saying is, there'll be opportunities when you go with an open mind. Go ahead, take it, and keep your ego aside. You will go loud, large, and fly higher and higher. That is how I'll put it, Kamalji. I just hope the point is conveyed.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for being with us, and it's been privilege, and I'm very sure that our audience will take a lot of rich advices from you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being with us.